Hello everyone, welcome to the weekly Purple Penny coin video. Apologies for being 10 minutes late today, but the laptop battery was flat because I had it plugged into the wrong thing, and it's taken a little while for the battery to get enough charge to be able to have the video today. I hope that it doesn't go flat halfway through what we're doing, but we'll do our best. My name's Mark. I run the Purple Penny coin and banknote business in Mawson Lakes in Adelaide, South Australia, with my wife Catherine. Catherine is over there doing her Monday morning mailing as she usually does. And this week was last week was our third birthday here at the Mawson Lakes shop. Those of you who don't know, Catherine and I have run the Purple Penny for more than 10 years, but we're primarily online, and then about 3.5 years ago we thought we'd open up a bricks and mortar store, and it just so happens on May 12th in 2019 that happened, and that was our birthday last week. It kind of slipped by without us noticing because last week was extremely busy here in the shop. I'm not quite sure why, but it was very busy, lots of buying and lots of selling, which is fantastic, and we didn't realise until the day after that the birthday had come and gone. I'd like to thank everyone who has supported us for the last 3 years. It's been a wonderful journey, and Catherine and I have enjoyed it very much, and we still do enjoy it very much. And it is people that come in here and talk to us and call us on the phone and talk to us through social media that make it as interesting as what it is, and of course the coins and things that come in through the front door. So thanks to everyone for helping us through this journey over the last 3 years. Right, say a few hellos to people. Hello Patrick, Ogie, Greg, Alistair, John, Alex, Mike, Ash, Greg and Brendan and Rob. We'll just relate a bit of a funny story. Catherine and I went to some markets yesterday. We do like to go to markets every now and again and have a snoop around and see if we can find things, and it's always nice to do so anonymously. And funnily enough, yesterday, even though I had a mask on, I had someone recognise me from the Purple Penny videos, which was a bit of a... It was good in one respect because it's nice that the videos are being watched, but I do like to just get about anonymously and look, because I do enjoy looking. It's not always business for me. But thanks to the gentleman at the store at the Port Adelaide Markets who recognised me, and I do wish everyone there at the Port Adelaide Markets best of luck come the end of August when those close down. I do wish them all luck for whatever it is that they move on to next. Right, let's jump onto the news. So, Great Australian Coin Hunt 3, all of our stock arrived last Monday, well, all of it apart from one box, which decided to have a bit of an extended tour of Victoria, which arrived on Tuesday. We've just about sold out of all of those. We had 3 or 4 people that contacted us and told us about the coloured coins that they'd found. Congratulations to them. The June RAM release is coming up in the first Thursday in June. We've got our allocations this week. The coloured dollar is going to be hard to get, the coloured Commonwealth Games dollar. So we're not taking any interest in that any longer because of the small allocation we've got. If you are interested in getting that coin and you haven't got your name down with us already, you'd better prepare yourself for jumping online and trying to grab those dollars somewhere else. I'm not sure why the allocations were so small, but that's what it is, unfortunately. In the news this week, I did see a report released by Brigham Young University into how COVID-19 is transmitted via cash and coins and credit cards. And of course, you all may remember back in May 2020 and April 2020 that the powers that be were recommending that we go cashless, and of course the banks jumped on top of that because it means that they get to skim a % off of all transactions, because cash could transmit COVID-19. Brigham Young University sampled a random selection of coins and banknotes and credit cards from around their campus and basically found that there was no transmissible virus on coins or banknotes, but there was on credit cards. Now, whether that's whether the surfaces are more transmissible on credit cards or whether they're used more isn't really clear. But they did do some research into deliberately putting virus onto coins and paper banknotes and credit cards, and did find that the credit cards had a larger amount of virus present after a day compared with coins and banknotes. I will just have a bit of a proviso there. The banknotes that they tested them on were paper ones, and they were basically, they murdered the virus almost immediately. Within an hour, there was no detectable virus on paper banknotes, whereas coins, it was still detectable after a day. But it is just interesting that we're all told to go cashless, and it turns out that there was probably no particular reason to do so. Next funny coin story I found was a dog in Poland which has dug up a clay pot of 100 medieval coins. They were found in southwestern Poland, and they were what's known as bracteates. And a bracteate is a thin coin that is just stamped on one side, and the impression of the stamping shows through on the other side, and you see the correct image. So I'll just show you what those bracteates look like. That's them there. Image courtesy of the Lower Silesia Heritage Protection Office. Thank you to them for allowing us to use the image. Bracteates were, as I said, only stamped from one side. They derive from a Latin word which means thin metal. And the 100 or so that were found in this clay pot that was dug up by a dog are all in excellent condition and from the 13th century. Now, it would be cool to be able to buy a dog-found coin, but unfortunately these coins are all going into museums. But as I said in the video description, is there nothing that dogs can't do? They're treasure hunters as well. Right, that's it for the news this week. I was going to show and tell some items that we bought last week, but because of the battery problems on the computer, I have to try and keep things a little bit brief. We'll just see if there's any more people that have said hello here. Right, Alex, Ash, Mike, Greg. Thanks, Greg, for the happy birthday wishes there. Brendan, Rob, Darren, Alex. Yes, they are good markets there, Alex. I was talking about the Port Dock markets here in Adelaide, which are closing down at the end of August. Alison, Dillis, John, and Michael. How are you going? Michael's a shop regular here. It's always a pleasure to see him in here. Right, we'll just wind up the topic from last week, and you might remember last week we talked about collar errors, coin collar errors, and we'll just have a quick refresher there of what a collar die is. That's a cut through of a obverse die and a reverse die, and then the collar die around the outside. And the collar die is, of course, serves two purposes. Firstly, it stops the coin spreading out too much. If you were to get a disc of plasticine and squash it with your finger, it will keep spreading out because it's not constrained at all. So the first purpose of a collar die is to constrain that flow and give you coins that are all the same size. The second reason, of course, is to apply edge reading or edge graining, whatever you want to call it, edge milling. So as the coin is squashed out, it forms a reading on the inside of that die. Now, the collar die is not a fixed object. It actually moves up and down, so it moves down to allow a blank to be fed into the coining chamber. It moves up as the coin is struck to constrain the coin from spreading out, and then it moves back down so that the struck coin can move out. So I posed 3 questions to you last week, which were these ones here. What happens if the coin blank is too big to fit into the collar die? How could that happen? It happens because coin blanks are rimmed, and what that means is that before they go into the coin press, they're actually run through what's called an upsetting mill, and that forms a rim, a raised rim around the edge of the coin blank, and it's for 2 reasons. One is it reduces the striking pressure required to strike the coin, and the second is that it makes sure that you have fully formed rims on the coins, because those rims help protect the coin from wearing. What happens if it's too big and it doesn't fit into the collar die? So what you end up with then is a coin that is too big to fit into the collar die, but when it is struck, the coin press does its best to push it down into the collar die anyway. Now the proviso here is that the collar die will actually, because if it was mechanically fixed, it could actually break. When it's struck with the hammer die, it could actually break, so they're designed to break away and move. But of course the coin is jammed into that collar die somewhat before it breaks away and moves. And what you end up with there is what's called a partial collar error. So if you look here, we look at a 1960 florin, you can see that we've got the edge graining or the edge milling around part of the thickness of the coin. And then above that, the coin is actually bulging out across the top of the collar die. So we end up with what's called a partial collar error. And if we look at this 20-cent piece here, you can see it looks very similar. So we've got a nice 20-cent piece, partial collar error there. That bulging over the top of the edge graining is much more apparent. You've got that edge graining that is just travelling around part of the thickness of the coin. So that is called a partial collar error, and it's usually due to the fact that the coin blank is too big to fit into the collar die. Let's have a look at our second what if question here. What happens if the blank does not seat into the collar die? Now that means that when the blank is located, it isn't located centrally above the collar die, it's located off to one side. And when this happens, often if the collar die does not break away, so as I said, it needs to be able to move away or it gets broken, then you actually end up with a coin blank that is jammed down forcefully into the collar die. And here in Australia, we call that a ram strike error. But if you've ever sent a ram strike error off to PCGS, then you'll find that they just call it a partial collar error. So the reason for that is because it is a partial collar error. But if you want to classify it further, the Americans would call it a stiff collar. The collar doesn't move out of the way, so you end up with the coin extruded down into the collar die. I'm not sure why it's called a ram strike here in Australia. It's not a commonly used term worldwide, but it's what we call it. But in America, you would see it called a partial collar error or a stiff collar error. Now, we have this rather uniquely shaped coin here in Australia, which is the 12-sided 50-cent piece. When that isn't located properly into the collar die, and it might not be off-centre, but it actually, from a rotation point of view, it's not aligned properly, as it's jammed down into that stiff collar die, you get these classic fins on the coin. Now, with these two pictures here aren't the same coin, obviously, but for illustration purposes, it's perfectly fine. In this case, the head side or the obverse side is the anvil side, and the tail side is, or the reverse side is the hammer side of the die. As the coin isn't aligned properly and it's struck by the hammer die, which is the reverse die, it gets pushed down into the collar and you get these little extruded lugs formed all the way around the 50-cent piece. So that's quite unique to this shape of coin. So this is because the coin is not aligned properly, does not drop into the collar die correctly, and is forced down into the collar die by the hammer die, which in this case is the reverse. For a round coin, it looks quite different. So this is a lovely little threepence. I think it's a 1948 threepence. So it has been incorrectly aligned with the collar die. It's been set off to one side. The hammer die, or the in this case, which is also the which in this case is the heads die, has come down, pushed the coin and forced it right down into that collar die, and you get this lovely tall extruded edge on it. So as I said, here in Australia we call that a ram strike error, but everywhere else in the world they'd call it a partial collar error or a stiff collar error. Our third what if is what happens if the collar die is not in position? As I said previously, that collar die isn't fixed. It does retract and come back into position as each blank is fed into the coin press and as each struck coin is taken out of the coin press. For whatever reason, that collar die might not get put back into position and a coin gets struck. And if we use my my analogy of the disc of the round blob of plasticine, in this case, if we squash that round blob of plasticine without the edge being constrained, which is what happens when the collar die isn't in place, you end up with unconstrained spread of the coin. And out of collar errors, I think, are one of the most spectacular and underappreciated type of errors. Let's look at a round one first. And I think they're underappreciated, because they are much scarcer than partial collar errors or ram strike errors. You really don't see them at all in the decimal series. The only ones that I can ever remember seeing are, you do see the odd $2005 coin that has been struck completely out of collar, and you do see the odd 20-cent piece. But for the balance of them, you really don't see them much at all. I think that they are very desirable, and error collectors, if you are seriously into errors, you should be looking out for them. Much harder to find than partial collar errors. So this is a florin, and you can see clearly here it has been struck completely out of collar. The planchet has spread out in an unconstrained fashion. If you examine the edges of this coin, it's got no edge graining on it, so the collar die was clearly not in place. If you want to see a decimal coin that has been struck completely out of collar, then go no further than the 50-cent pieces that the Royal Mint in London struck in 1981. So these are the chuck and die 50-cent pieces. A number of these have shown up over the years that have been struck completely out of collar. So if you compare this with the ram strike 50-cent piece I showed before, you'll notice that this doesn't have any raised lugs. So the collar die has not been present at all, and the coin has been struck, rotated incorrectly, and you end up with unconstrained flow of the metal. So just a much bigger coin than what you'd expect if it was struck in collar die. That's it for collar errors. Sorry I've had to race through that today, but as I said, we've got battery problems with the computer. Let me just see where we're at. 12%. So yeah, we're right on the cusp of the computer falling over and dying. Let's have a look if we've got any more comments here. Ash says he's going to get his partners to dig up their backyard in German Silesia. Get them a metal detector, Ash. You never know what you might find in a country that has metal using history that goes back as far as what Europe's does. Hello, Cherie. Hello, Kimmy. What's the mintage on the Commonwealth Games? I can't say because the mint didn't... Brendan's asking what the mintage is on the coloured $1 Commonwealth Games coin that's due for release next month. I can't say because it's under embargo. The mint didn't release the mintage figures, so but I can just tell you that the dealer allocation was very small compared to the total mintage, so it's going to make it hard for you to get this from RAM authorised dealers. Hello, Gwen. Thanks, Glenn, for the errors there. Thanks for the comment on those. Thanks, Shane. Thanks, Mike. Alex, wrong planchet also. So, yeah, Alex, the Royal Mint in London, when they were striking the 1981 Charles and Diana 50-cent pieces, did have problems with blank contaminations. So, obviously, those 50-cent pieces struck on at least 3 different blanks. That one that I showed you wasn't, though. It was the correct blank, just struck out of collar. Ash says that if he gets his relatives to dig up their backyard in Silesia, they'll probably find bombs. I hope not. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. I do apologise for the delay today. I'll make sure to plug in the laptop when I'm finished here today. Thank you everyone for the questions and the kind comments, and again, Catherine and I would like to pass on our thanks to everyone who supported us for the last 3 years. It has been a blast, and I hope the next 3 years turns out to be just as much fun. everyone, please do take care this week. Happy collecting. As always, if you've got any questions or anything you'd like me to talk about, please do send us a message or call us or email us, and I'll do my best to cover it in an upcoming video. Bye for now.